Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Funky Brain Podcast. My name is Dennis, and this is my funky brain up here, and we're going to have a lot of fun today. Of course, this show is the Funky Brain Podcast, which I know you all know, and we're talking today with the host of the Happy Brain Podcast. So that's going to be really cool. And she's a Ph.D. who's studied and written books about the brain chemistry of animals and relayed them to our own human behavior. So it's fascinating stuff, and I can't wait to talk to her and learn more about dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, and so much more. Loretta Breuning, how are you doing today?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited. Can you share with our listeners a little bit about your story and how it led to what you do here today?
Sure. So like everybody, I grew up around witnessing the unhappiness of others and try to make sense of it. So some people grow up with you have this theory that the reason people are unhappy around me is because of this or this. But in my case, it was sort of like I couldn't figure it out. Like, why is everybody, upset all the time? So I think maybe that's how I came to be always looking for the deeper reason, and the reasons that were given to me didn't work. And then when I was a parent myself, of course, like everyone, I thought, oh, I'm going to do everything different and then everything's going to be perfect. And the same with my students, of whom I had thousands. And needless to say, it was not all perfect. And that's what made me look deeper at how the brain works. And I like your word, funky. We may be using it differently, but my view of the funky brain, as I've learned from animals, is that our brain did not evolve to make us happy about sitting on the couch. That the happy chemicals evolved to motivate you for taking survival action. We define survival in a quirky way. I say in my books a quirky way, although I could say a funky way, but funky implies self-destructive, maybe, I don't know. So I don't think I'll go there.
Yeah, it has different meanings. My ex used to say, she used to wonder, I used to say, oh, I have funky brain. She was like, what does that mean? And I was like, I couldn't explain it. But yeah, as the years went on, she understood what it meant.
Well, I would call that in my language is old neural pathways that we're not wired at birth, unlike animals. We build our wiring from experience. And, what does a toddler know about the world that is worth building the GPS that will guide you through life? But that's how we build it. So by the time we're 8, we've built pretty much our neural network that guides us through life. Then in puberty, we have another shot because we have more of the chemicals of neuroplasticity. And so that's what's a little more easy to remember consciously, the experiences of your adolescence. And nobody intentionally uses old neural pathways, but that's just how the brain works.
And that's great stuff. And I talk about that in all my works, actually, but the subconscious thinking, what you were just talking about is basically our subconscious mind is running the show, 90%. I don't know what the exact equation is, but, the conscious mind. Yeah, our conscious mind is our mind of intent. It's the one that says, this is my to-do list. I'm doing this today. I'm going to do that. And the subconscious mind says, let's go get a beer. And because that's what I was programmed to do when I was younger, somewhere along the way.
So, and here's the fascinating question. So I have my to-do list. I have my urge to go get a beer. And then I have a split second to take the action. So that's where our power is, in that split second when I either step toward the beer or whatever's on the to-do list, right? Because the to-do list is just in a way automatic, just like the beer.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, we all know what we should be doing. And what I find is that it's hard without accountability, especially once you're so deep, if you're so deep into that unhealthy behaviors, those unhealthy behaviors and belief systems that we developed years ago when our neural pathways were became misaligned, right? When we have accountability, and that accountability could be a person like a coach or a doctor or somebody, or it could be your calendar. It depends, but it's first identifying the problem, having that awareness, and then creating steps to get there. And then accountability with another person does help you realign those things.
So then if we're talking about how the brain works, so what is it about the accountability? That's the interesting thing, right? It's because when another person is there, you see it from their perspective, which activates more neurons because you're so used to seeing it from your own perspective that you don't think about it differently. Like in the moment when a person is saying, I deserve to go get a beer, they've said that to themselves so often that their higher, quote unquote, higher sophisticated verbal brain, you can come up with lots of great arguments for going for a beer. So that's why I don't do this simple division between this brain and that brain, because so what is it about being accountable is in some way it's activating a different system. The different system is really what I've projected. If you're my coach, I'm projecting something onto you, right? And that may differ with the client, but in a way, that's what's getting them to see their own bullshit differently.
Yeah, I love that. You know, it's funny you brought up how, like, I would go get that beer in a split second. Years ago, I was really messed up and I had every intention of going home. I was a chef too. So like it was a bad combo there. But every night I would go to work every day, so hungover and just like swollen and hating myself, full of remorse. I said, I'm going home right after work. And I would end up at the bar and not even realize that I drove in there and I would be doing shots. And I was like, how did I even get here? I don't know how it happened. And what's your take on that?
Oh, that's a great question. So combination of factors. Obviously, one of them that I always focus on in all my work is old neural pathways. So we need to understand how are our old neural pathways built. Dog training makes it very easy to understand. Your brain learns from reward and pain. So you got rewards from going for the shots. But then you say, well, I also got pain from going from the shots, but the pain was like later. So partly your brain didn't associate the pain, like when you had to get up for work, that's when you felt the pain. So you projected the pain onto the work rather than the shots, because that's how the dog brain works. And the dolphin brain, like dolphin training is what developed a lot of this. When a dolphin does this beautiful spin and it's up in the air and they want to reward it, but you can't reward it because it's far away from you. So they blow a whistle and that tells the dolphin, whatever you just did, that's the right thing and you're going to get rewarded for it. But it's what's happening in that moment that the brain connects. So if you were having a great time while you had the shots, that's what wired your brain. Now, how did your brain decide that you were having a great time while you had the shots? That's wired from past experience too. So the common example, of course, is the camaraderie. And it's basically relieving pain from the past. So if someone feels pain in a certain social situation, the shots relieve the pain, then you think, well, the shots solved the problem, but you didn't know you had a problem because it was a nonverbal problem. And the pain is very deep because it's a nonverbal experience that you had in your early years. It may be one experience, usually it's repeated experience, and often it's through mirror neurons, we absorb the pain of our parents. So when our parents have social problems and social frustrations, we drink them in, we store them in our circuits, and then that's what we're trying to solve the way a dog brain would solve it. You know?
I'm totally fascinated by all this stuff. So let's go into a little bit about describing what these chemicals are. You have a way better explanation. I was watching some of your videos earlier, but there's the dopamine, the serotonin, the endorphins, and then the cortisol, the bad stress hormone, the one that's getting us all sick here. So to give us your definitions of each and how they work in our lives.
Sure. Well, so I went digging for monkey studies and animal studies that helped me understand the job that these chemicals do in nature. And I read a lot of evolutionary psychology, but nobody is saying what I'm saying because it has become popular to romanticize animals and only see the good in animals and the bad in humans, and to blame all bad things on capitalism instead of seeing that this is how animals act. And the way animals act was known for 100 years. And I give a lot of my credit to David Attenborough because he's still making videos at age 95, but he really invented the wildlife video genre, invented a lot of the technology or developed it. And he was trained in the 1950s when the truth about animals was able to be spoken publicly. So I explain in my books how I gather these little bits of information that were there from research all along, but no one connected the dots because it's politically incorrect to admit that animals have a drive for new and improved, for example. So dopamine is the drive for new and improved. So if you imagine our Stone Age ancestors, they had to work hard to find food. Soon the food was gone, so they had to find more. So we've inherited a brain that's designed to seek, and then a few hours later you get hungry again and you keep seeking. And if you always focus on the food that's most easily available, then you're not going to have a nutritionally balanced diet. So dopamine rewarded you for looking for something different. And that's why we're all looking for something different. And we get our food too easily. So we have so much energy left to look for other different things.
You know, that's really cool. You know what the example I use with dopamine, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but is social media. So what they do, and it used to be, Facebook started it however many years ago, but they put the little red dots there. You know, so it used to be, I don't know if you do Facebook, but if you open up your app on Facebook, there's little red dots. And it used to say that you had a message. And so it's like, that's the little reward thing. So it trips off the dopamine and says, oh, somebody loves me, little red dots. So then now what happened was they noticed that people kept tuning in all day long to look for little red dots because it tripped off the dopamine. And then now they start adding all these other things that give you red dots. Oh, well, this group is looking for you and this and this and this. Now you open it up and there's red dots everywhere. And all of the social media networks are following the same path.
Yeah.
So that way you tune in all day long to see if somebody loves you.
So thanks for bringing that up. So the somebody loves me is oxytocin. So the dopamine is the anticipation of a reward, and which reward could be somebody loves me or somebody respects me, which is serotonin. Okay. Or it could just be steps toward a goal, which is dopamine. So they all work together. And again, if you look at it from a Stone Age perspective, you could see how these are all things that met natural needs, but now we're just looking for new ways because the chemicals feel good. Mm. So I should probably distinguish between social trust and social importance. Okay, so oxytocin is the herd feeling that I'm safe because I'm surrounded by others. And as much as we like to glorify it today with lots of verbiage today about empathy and altruism, that in the animal world, when you look for a herd, you're trying to make sure that you're not the one that gets eaten by standing out there alone. So it's not really altruistic, but it's mutuality, it's reciprocity, because in order to get the protection from you, I have to offer you something. And then if you learn that you can trust me to offer you something, then I get support from you, you get support from me. So mutual support built from repeated experience. So that's why, and you could say like in social media, they saw that I clicked on Tim's things before, so they think I care about Tim or I trust him. So, and you may have noticed like Facebook keeps alerting you about people you hardly know. Like, why does it do that? It's because you clicked on them before. right? So it's just random, everybody has to know it's an algorithm. Tim may not even like me, So, but now moving to serotonin. So this is a hard one because this is nothing like what we hear about serotonin, but for the whole 20th century, it was known that mammals are very hierarchical and competitive. And as they rise in the social hierarchy, they have more success in keeping their genes alive. And that's what natural selection selects for. So serotonin gives you a good feeling when you manage to get yourself up a little bit. Like if I meet you on a path and I stand up and you stand up bigger than me, and I'm like, oh, he's bigger than me, I better back down or else he's going to bite me. So in that split second, the mammal brain is constantly comparing you to others and making a split second decision. Am I stronger than them or weaker than them? And if you think you're stronger than them, serotonin is released. Nobody wants to admit that they got this going on, and it's uncomfortable and difficult for everyone. But if you always think, oh, I'm the nice guy, I'm always going to let you be the big monkey, I'm always going to be the little monkey, then I deprive myself of serotonin. Then I may even start hating you for depriving me of the good feeling. So that's why I think it's so important that we're honest about this.
So I was taught, and correct me if I'm wrong, that serotonin, well, you have more wiser, in-depth definitions than I was taught. Mine are very broad, but I was thinking what I was taught was serotonin is produced like from meditating, oxytocin from hugging. So that was like the happy chemical that's produced when you hug people. And those were two definitions that I knew. Are those correct?
I don't agree with them, but this is what the Dr. Google says. This is the currently accepted view because it's so politically incorrect to say what I'm saying. And I can say it because I'm retired and I'm not doing this for money. But yeah,
I love that though. Go ahead. You can go ahead.
Yeah, if a young working person said this, it could be career suicide. And so that's why I try to explain this, and I give some links to like a study that was reported in the New York Times in the 1980s and lists of books about this competitiveness among mammals, but it's wiped off the internet,
And what is that?
The fact that animals compare themselves to others and release serotonin when they see that they're in the one-up position.
Oh, okay.
They release cortisol, the stress chemical, when they see that they're in the one-down position. And that's why we drive ourselves crazy over minutia.
So how can we rewire ourselves to enjoy these happy chemicals in healthy new ways?
Regarding specifically the serotonin, I just wrote a new book about that. It won't be released until September. It's called Status Games, Why We Play and How to Stop. But all of my earlier books explain these things, and all of my free resources on the internet. So I have a lot of different ways, but the bottom line is new pathways build from repetition. So when you understand what triggers each of the chemicals in the state of nature, you can find a safe way to release it today and then repeat it, and you will wire yourself to find it in new ways. Otherwise, you will wire yourself to find it in whatever way just happened to trigger it in your childhood, because that's how the brain works.
Well put. What's one of your favorite stories from studying animal behaviors?
One of the ones that like most shaped my wow. So has to do with monkeys were in a study where they were trained to do a task in exchange for a reward. So you put this peg in a hole and they give you a spinach leaf, and you put another peg in a hole and they give you a spinach leaf. Then suddenly, instead of giving the monkey a spinach leaf, they gave it a sip of apple juice. And the monkey was like, wow, this is great, because sweet food, and you can imagine in the monkey world, like they only eat fruit when it's in season. The rest of the time they have to survive on leaves. So it's like, wow, when fruit time comes. So we have inherited that brain of like, when you taste a food with extra special sugar or fat, your dopamine goes, wow, get me more of this. So they hooked up the monkeys to measure their dopamine. And that wow feeling only lasted for 4 days. After that, nothing. So you still get the apple juice, but it doesn't feel good anymore. Can you imagine? And isn't that just like the newness of everything? We won't mention anything. And you still consciously know, like you're still getting the extra special reward, but it doesn't turn you on anymore, literally, physically. So then, if that weren't bad enough, they stopped giving the apple juice and went back to spinach. And then the monkeys went into a rage and threw the spinach back at the experimenter, despite the fact that they had been perfectly satisfied with the spinach a few days earlier. So this was discovered, and then it was covered up. And because now monkeys are being presented as altruistic, and the monkey gets upset if someone else doesn't get as many spinach leaves as they're getting. So this is the subordination of science to politics, and it's really sad.
Yes, it is. I agree with you totally, 100%. So tell us a little bit about your books, like the titles. How can we buy them? How can we get in touch with Loretta and so forth?
Thank you. So everything is on my website, innermammalinstitute.org, innermammalinstitute.org. So my introductory book is called Habits of a Happy Brain, Retrain Your Brain to Boost Your Serotonin, Dopamine, Oxytocin, and Endorphin. And that introduces everything in a nice short way, and it's available in all the usual places. Then I have a book called Tame Your Anxiety, Rewiring Your Brain for Happiness. And that addresses cortisol, the stress chemical, and with all the same animal perspective. And then I mentioned I have the new book, Status Games, coming out next fall. And then I created a workbook called 14 Days to Sustainable Happiness. It's as short as I could possibly make it, and as simple and fun, just for a person who wants to rewire their emotions. Like, I just want to feel different. Tell me what to do now.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great stuff. In fact, before we go, I have a friend, and she is early 50s, and she has a very bad stage ovarian cancer. She wanted to do more meditating and stuff like that. So what would you tell her?
Okay. So this is what I would tell her. I mean, all the stuff that's out there, the positive psychology stuff, meditate, give money to the poor, light a candle. I know all that stuff, but from an inner mammal perspective, what our brain cares about is legacy, is survival. And we all are aware of our mortality, and it feels horrible. Now, when you're in pain, that's even worse. So it's a very difficult position. And when you're in pain, you just want to immediately relieve pain, and that's absolutely fine. But legacy is what we care about, is leaving something behind. And what I explain, and this is even in my new workbook, it's in all my books. Legacy is if you are a carpenter and you create a chair that will survive when you're gone, that eases you a bit. It eases that mammalian fear that you're not going to survive by creating something that will survive. So anything you create that will survive. So the simple example I always say is, if you have a favorite recipe that you want to hand down to people, make a pretty version of it and get it laminated and give it to people. It creates the mammalian feeling that your unique individual essence will survive, because animals don't know what genes are, and yet they're going around doing everything to keep their unique individual essence alive. So that's really what a person cares about.
Thank you so much for that, Loretta. And I really appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to the next time we talk.
Yes, me too.
Everybody, please reach out to Loretta Breuning. Thanks for tuning in to the Funky Brain podcast today. It was great to see you. Hope you heard something that made you feel better. I sure did. And I'll talk to you soon. Have a beautiful day. Bye for now. One of the biggest questions I hear all the time is, what does it take to create lasting change in my life? Well, it depends on what's going on in your life. Are you struggling with alcoholism or an addiction of any type, like food or shopping or smoking or your iPhone or porn? Are you having health problems or relationship problems? Do you want to lose 30 pounds or 100 pounds? Do you have a brilliant business idea that you just can't seem to get off the ground? Have you been trying to write your book for years but keep procrastinating? Are you in debt up to your eyeballs and don't know how to get out of it? You want to run a marathon? Well, one of the biggest hurdles in achieving these life-changing goals is consistency. A great example I like to use is when you hear, I tried that diet, but it didn't work. Well, the truth is that it did work. You probably stopped working at it. How does that all play out? Well, you go on a diet, you do what it says, you stop eating sugar and processed foods and crap, you start exercising, moving your body more, and then you lose 30 pounds. So you start eating cheesecake and fast food again, and you gain it all back. So what happened there? There was no accountability and, of course, no consistency in your life. This is where having a high performance coach in your life comes into play. We decide what it is you want to achieve, whether it's sobriety, healthy relationships, weight loss, or whatever. Then we create specific action steps to get these done on a daily basis. And then we radically change your life forever. As a master life coach and best-selling author, I've been working with both men and women worldwide for over 15 years to help them kick their addictions and master their lives. I'm currently working with clients in Canada, England, New Zealand, and of course, throughout the United States here. Set up your first free session today. Don't wait till tomorrow or for the perfect time to get started. Now is the perfect time to change your life forever. I'll see you soon. Have a beautiful day.